You do Starfleet Boy After Dark, but now you do pre-Starfleet Boys as well on boat race.
I'm a streaming whore. I'll go on anyone's stream.
This is live too. We're saying this live.
I know. I saw the live. I'm not shy about it.
I had my eyes closed. I didn't see it.
Invite me to all your streams.
I'll come with them. I don't care. We come as a duo.
As a duo. There you go.
Dynamic duo.
Two for the price of one.
You and me. We are Navarre.
We are Navarre. Why is Navarre no longer in The Mandalorian? And now I'm just kidding. It just sounds the same.
I think Navarre was always a Star Trek thing.
Yeah, this is a Vulcan word that means like. Anyways, it's PJ's show and we're just talking. Isn't he supposed to introduce?
Very true. Go ahead. Introduce.
Oh no! I was being a polite host and waiting for you to finish your conversation.
Sorry.
Well, we're here to talk about Season 3, Episode 7 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled Unification III, which I don't perceive as a continuation of Parts 1 and 2 from TNG. I think it's its own thing, and that's why I think they didn't show a previously on Star Trek thing where it was like the TNG stuff, because it worked for, if memory serves, because it was directly related to Talos, right? So, but this wasn't this wasn't a sequel to Unification Part 2, in my opinion.
Could you call it like an epilogue though? Because it directly ties in the sense that this is the first time we're seeing a unified, the dream that Spock and the Romulans who wanted to who started the unification movement has come true, basically. And so it is I think it's connected enough in that way that for me, it could be
that's true. Yes. Yeah.
It's what would you call it, like a spiritual successor of sorts?
Just a sequel. I mean, it's literally like, oh, this happened in Unification, and now
it's a follow-up to those events. Those events. I think that calling it Unification 3 was like I think it's the equivalent of a clickbait title for a video or an article that a Star Trek show could do. I think that it was, and I'm not the biggest fan of Unifications 1 and 2, but I think that maybe calling this Unification Part 3 was I wouldn't have done it. I didn't feel enough like a continuation of that exact story, although it kind of used elements from it. This thing was a bit ham-fisted in, I think.
And I also have a question of the relevance of the title in this particular episode, because can somebody explain to me what the unification was?
I thought we were going to address the unification of what are now the Navarre and the Federation. I thought that's what we were going to. I thought the unification was now that these guys, the Romulans and the Vulcans, are unified, the quest is to unify them with the Federation, or bring them back to the Federation of Planets, right?
I think a lot of people thought that too. Yeah,
I think Jesse Gender. I watched so many things. I'm so sorry if I'm crediting the wrong person, but what they said made sense to me. Which is
we are all one person.
We are all one person. It's true. What the Star Trek community said to me was, my trusted sources. What I understood from what she said was that what she liked about it, and I like this too, is that like we don't get a unification of Vulcans and Romulans in Star Trek, the TNG episode. We never get it, and so in this episode, we're not. It's kind of fitting, or like
it's the quest for it.
It's more the quest for it. And it's kind of fitting that I would have been upset if in one episode they're like, "Yay, let's join the Federation." I think it kind of went the way that I again, what you said earlier, like maybe spiritual successor, but I think the title, although clickbaity, I agree with that, is apropos to this episode.
Star Trek is all about firsts, and this is the first episode to have a clickbait title, so that's a first.
No, that's not true. Come on. I can probably find a lot, but they're probably mostly in Discovery.
Well, there's no episode called like Picard Dies. You know what I mean? They called it like in Arcadia Part 1 and 2, right? So
that's what it should have been called. Picard Dies.
Oh no! Part 1. Picard dies. Oh no, Part 1.
I think it would have been better to call the episode simply Unification. You didn't, because if it's about
but
that,
you can't do that because technically the other one, even if we have it as Part 1 and Part 2, I think officially it is called Unification. You know what I mean?
Not. I don't know if you guys caught this, but it kind of fits though, like because Unification 1 and 2 is about Spock and his efforts, and it seems clear to me that the Navarre,
Unified.
but they kind of deify or at least revere Spock in much the same way that people revere Surak, because at one point he's like, I forget the name of. Right, the teachings, they even say the teachings of Spock. Like, so Spock is like if Surak is like Moses, Spock is Jesus. Sorry to make these weird religious parallels, but you know what I'm saying? Like to the Vulcans. So I feel like it was, I don't know. I'm not going to defend the title if you guys don't like it, but I think it was fitting.
I'm not one to care too much about titles. It's just that this one, like this is, there will be conversation about this title due to the fact that it is like continuation. The most frustrating thing for me is how to deal with this on my YouTube channel, because if episodes have 2 different titles, I make 2 videos. But if one episode has the same title but Part 1 and Part 2, then I make 1 video. This makes it this makes it complicated.
I think Star Trek had it out for you. They were like, "Oh, how can we make this most difficult?"
Yeah, they were like, and they also did like a Part 1 for like episode 1 of the season, but there's no Part 2 to that. So they're like, "Oh, we're gonna screw with this guy." Kurtzman was like,
So what did you guys think of Leonard Nimoy's appearance from the episode Unification Part 2?
I have mixed feelings personally. I will say this: when I watched it, I don't get very emotional watching Discovery because I usually feel it's very manufactured and very in my face. But in this moment, there was a shot that they cut to Burnham kind of reacting to seeing her older brother or her younger brother so old. And I got a bit emotional. I didn't cry or anything like that, but I felt it. But then I also feel like it's kind of like one of those situations where like, where did this footage even come from? One of those scenes, I think, was just Picard and him talking in private. So one of them must have had like a GoPro or something on them.
I think it's footage from the Tal Shiar, micro drones that are floating.
This was in secret. They were hiding. If the Tal Shiar knew about
Pardek
doing it,
remember Pardek was behind. They were actually not secret. Remember, the whole thing was that Pardek was with the other side, and they actually knew their movements and everything the whole time.
Possible. It comes out of Jean-Luc Picard's personal files, so maybe I'm thinking he just filmed everything. Dude filmed everything, and he had like personal footage and files of everything, all of it.
I really think it, but like, at this point, like, I think it's also fair to say that it's okay to do this in Star Trek because, one, it gave us that, what you were talking about, that emotional moment to see Leonard Nimoy on screen again. Doctor Who does this a lot too, but two, like, I mean, how do you explain the footage in Star Trek 3, the detailed footage of, in Star Trek 4, the detailed footage of the Enterprise?
The only time they really got away with this was in the Menagerie, because they have the cage footage, but it's kind of like they use that fake ass excuse, like, oh, it's the Telosians they're sending all this footage.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, I nitpick on that, but I felt like they chopped up some of the dialogue because I think they took it from 2 different scenes and I didn't rewatch Unifications 1 and 2, but it was all right. It was cool.
I felt the same way emotionally, PJ. I had a lot of expectations because I knew, or I hoped really hard that we would see Spock. And I was really, really hoping it would be both, actually. Like, I thought she would go through logs of him throughout his time. Like I was expecting, or I was hoping for, not expecting. I got like what we got, I loved. But I was hoping to see like, Lieutenant Spock, and then, Captain Spock, and then Ambassador Spock, and she could kind of visually see. But that might have been way over the top and too hokey, which I tend to lean towards anyways. But I really thought it was a perfect way, and definitely Burnham reacting to him was what made that scene like kind of like how I would react to it as well, because Spock is all of our brothers in a weird way.
Yeah, that's so true. It was one of the highlights of the episode for me. I just was like, yeah, that's nice. It's not one of these, and they hinted at a Spock appearance in an earlier episode with the
with the sound, right?
with the transmission from Senatal, and it's like Spock's at the end. You hear like very distorted, "The Federation lives on" or whatever. But yeah, that was cool, and I like how they didn't overplay it. The only problem with this episode is that it's like you're Spock's sister, Spock's your brother, Spock this, Spock that, Spock. It's like, okay, we get it. We know they're related. You only have to mention it, at most 4 times in an episode instead of 16 or however many times that they seem to have mentioned it. I'm being hyperbolic, obviously, but come on. It's just like, stop name dropping.
Maybe not
Spock.
Maybe we should have to go through and count how many times they mentioned it, because it is at least 6, right?
By the way, did you guys catch the USS Yelchin, which was named after?
Yes, I just tweeted that out.
Oh, cool.
I very much appreciated that. And
anyways,
to finish with this Spock thing before we dive into it, and this kind of relates to what you're saying about the USS Yelchin, I felt like Star Trek Beyond did a very good job at basically celebrating and commemorating Leonard Nimoy's contribution to the franchise and to the fandom, to this world. And I'm not going to say this undercuts that, but it felt like, okay, so there wasn't a final appearance of Leonard Nimoy, which was a photograph, and we had that very emotional scene in Beyond, which I think worked for everyone. Now every new show is also going to do we get a Spock cameo, and I don't know how I feel about that.
I almost thought it would have been cool if they talked about like Spock's disappearance. I don't know if they did mention that, but like, the fact that he lived out his life in the Kelvin timeline.
They
would have no idea. Yeah,
I think he died I think what happened is in their eyes, he went to try and save Romulus with the red matter, but it didn't work.
And that's how he died, right?
He just died in the Romulus explosion, right?
That makes
Romulus and Remus. And I love how no one ever addresses the fact that the Remans are probably extinct.
I don't think they're extinct.
No one cares, right?
Have you done a species file on the Remans?
Not yet. Who cares?
Wow.
I want to ask you guys also about Tilly being promoted to first officer.
You said your problem was the whole Spock thing. My biggest critique with this episode is that while I love the character of Tilly, I thought it was inappropriate. It just, to me, Nilsson or Reese, there's so many other officers.
Father is gonna be so mad at this.
Absolutely irresponsible, and it makes me question Saru's judgment.
Well, it just shows me, what it really shows me is that the show, someone made this critique that the show feels over like reality, right? And I know that there are extreme cases where an ensign may in fact be the first officer, and I know that rank doesn't have to come into play for someone to be first officer, but for Saru the whole season to be giving Nilsson the chair, the comm, whenever he leaves, he's not like, Tilly take the comm, he's like, Nilsson take the comm, right? Like, so it just didn't fit, and I thought it was like an unearned moment for the character, because that's where the show got kind of a little bit meta, because the character also didn't understand and didn't really want the position. So I felt that was kind of meta and weird, but I still think it was just, I feel like they could have done something different with Tilly in this episode. And I do think that it was kind of distracting, actually, having to think about that over, with all the stuff going on that was very interesting about the Romulans and the Vulcans and the Federation and the Burn. We got a ton of exposition about those things in this episode. In fact, this episode is like almost entirely exposition, and we haven't even talked about freaking the Milat and the Picard connection yet. Like and Burnham's mom.
We'll get to that, but
right.
So Tilly for me was a ridiculous move. Deadpool 2 gets really meta about you'll see where I'm going with this. At the end of the movie, Deadpool 2, it gets real meta where it says, "Oh, don't you hate it when movies do CG fights with CG monsters and they put dubstep music?" And the movie's doing that, and it's like it's not because you're getting meta and you're making fun of that it takes away from the fact that you're still doing it. You're still doing a big CG fight with CG monsters with dubstep music, and it still sucks. It's not because you're joking about doing it that. And this is kind of the same way. It's not because the show addresses its own issues, like it's been doing with Burnham, but now it's addressing its own issue of like, oh, it's ridiculous to have Tilly as first. You still put Tilly in that position, and
there's such a thing as a second officer, isn't there?
Maybe people that
second officer.
Who?
Isn't there a rank, like a position, like when you're the first officer, there's the second officer, right?
I would have.
She could be the second officer.
Been bumped up.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a bit strange to me that they went in that direction.
The command structure on the ship seems to be Saru. It was Burnham, and then
they were a group of friends. That's what they are.
Then it was Nielsen, and then it was Reese.
I might be wrong about this. This is one of those things where Father's knowledge usually comes into play a little bit better. To one degree, TOS was loosey-goosey with all that stuff, and it didn't get like more realistic, so to speak, or didn't follow some sort of like real life structure until the films. I think Nicholas Meyer brought that into Star Trek.
Was implied as like, oh no, he was established as first officer, but he was also science officer, right? But there wasn't that much. Right. There wasn't a second officer unless that was maybe Sulu, I think, from what I understand.
Here's the thing about Saru. He's told both Stamets and Tilly, you are the two smartest officers on the ship. So if Tilly didn't complete the training program, okay, let's just throw that out the window and say we can just rank you up because you're qualified. You've shown you're qualified, okay? So she's giving people orders. She's doing a lot of she's doing a lot of things where she's in positions of authority. So why not just bump her up in rank and have her learn that way? But she never seems to be ready. And then Saru is like, isn't he kind of like disrespecting his other officers? And then at the end, the cringiest moment is them all like, do it, Tilly, do it, Tilly, do it, Tilly, yay! And it's like, oh my God, like, shouldn't you be a little upset? Why is everybody so positive? Are you all on drugs? Y'all smoking pot?
They got an engineering clap instead of a bridge clap.
Oh God! Oh God!
I do think that like even friends
that Saru gives.
Even friends. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was just going to say there's a reason that Saru gives, and he says you've experienced so much more than so many other officers in Starfleet, and this has become a recurring theme this season because they had that fun little montage where they explained to like Starfleet and the Federation what they've all been through, and it was as funny as that was. And Reno says we've been through this. As funny as that is, I mean, their adventures are no more spectacular or less than that of the Voyager or the NX-01 or all of the other shows that we've seen. Like everyone in Star Trek goes through the most insane things on a weekly basis, it would seem. So the Discovery crew hasn't been through that much more. This and Saru uses this thing. He justifies the choice to Tilly by saying, "You have done this time jump," and it's like the time jump is nothing. It's not a challenge that you live through for years and years and years that forge your character. A time jump is literally 1 minute you're here, the next minute you're here, and you have a headache, or maybe you're feeling a bit queasy. That's what it is. That's what a time jump is. And then he goes on and says that she's been able to manage this much better than the others, but she's the only character we've actually seen on screen, Detmer, apart from Detmer, that has addressed the issue of losing her parents, losing her family, feeling really sad about it, and almost crying in the arms of Burnham. So it I don't know. It didn't feel really justified to me. They're making it temporary, which I guess is going to fix this whole thing. Eventually, he'll choose someone. I think it's just to bring Burnham back. That's what scares me. I really hope it's not just to bring
I think he should have given a field promotion.
Yeah.
Like to lieutenant. Like that's the other thing. It might have made it feel better to me if he was like, well, listen, you can't be an ensign anymore. Like
Okay.
I'm giving you a field. You've been through all this. I'm giving you a field promotion.
If the Federation and the Admiral had designated an officer that he had, that they had, that is not a Discovery officer, and they're like, we're going to put a first officer from the future on your guys' ship. Maybe that'll help.
Oh, hey, Earl Grey Trekkie's here. Hey,
You
don't you not want spoilers? Although we like that you're here in the audience. It's cool.
Okay, yeah, there will be spoilers.
Oh yeah, by the way.
So can we talk?
Sorry.
Can we move on to the reveal of Burnham's mother? And I'm gonna take a quick break, and I'm gonna let you guys discuss that and make it show.
Make it show. I love it.
Do I go first, or do you go first?
Can I go first on this one? Because I know.
Go.
I think I know what. No, you could go first if you want to.
Okay. I don't care at all, personally. On one hand, I feel like I don't like it when shows always go back to like, oh, we have the same characters we bring back, or we reveal that this character is not dead and what have you. But in this instance, I really don't care whether it's like whether Burnham's mother is alive or not. I also don't really care whether she's part of the Quat Milat. That was a fun, interesting thing. The only thing that really bugged me is they assigned to be her advocate her mother, and I feel like that doesn't make sense in like a trial point of view to put
right
to designate someone's very close parent as the advocate. I would have put someone that isn't, and I feel like they should have put a Vulcan, but yeah.
Robbie says no worries, we can spoil him. Okay, Robbie, we're gonna spoil you.
Totally.
I had been waiting. So there's a couple of things I was waiting for. One was this episode because of the follow-up to Spock and his story and the story of the Vulcans and the Romulans. But I've been waiting for Burnham's mom. Like, I'm like, what the heck? Like, why haven't they done more with that? And so this was completely unexpected for me. And obviously, you know what a big fan I am of the Quat Milat and Elnor and that whole thing that they brought into. And I love that they explained it, by the way.
That was her mother?
What's that?
Did you predict that it would be her mother, or not at all?
No, not at all. I
got one of those moments, you know, when you don't predict something until the very last moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like right before she pulled the
veil.
Exactly.
Once they showed that the veil, and she started lifting the veil up, and I saw the hands, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be her mother. And it was like one of those last minute instantaneous prediction, and then it happens, and like, oh yeah, okay. But I didn't get it until the very last minute.
I went completely bonkers at the reveal, and I loved it. And I thought I did. I was just like, ah! It was just like one of those moments. And I loved it.
This episode got a Star Trek Picard out of 10 for you.
That's the thing. They almost made it impossible for me to dislike this episode. Like, not only they do like all these follow-ups, like Vulcans and Romulans are like my favorite classic Star Trek species or whatever. And I just, like, I mean, they're the most developed. I mean, I would say, like, especially the Vulcans, I would, through Spock. But anyways, when they said she was a Quat Milat, I was like, the Quat Milat are still around and they're like still doing this. And like, we didn't need, what's cool about it is that if you watch Picard, you don't need a lot. They still go ahead and explain to you what the Quat Milat are and everything like that. But the way that the actor, what's her name? Sonia Son, who plays Burnham's mom?
Okay, yeah.
She like channeled the spirit of how they were like in Picard. Like, I thought she did a great job of not being Burnham's mom from season 2, but being now this like woman who has gone through the conditioning and the training,
like the leader of the Quat Milat that we saw meet with Picard.
Yes, like that character, exactly. There was that vibe to her, and it was cool. I just like ate it up. I thought that brilliant acting on her part, and just again, like having Burnham's mom not be a big deal, but also be a big deal was a brilliant move, I thought, on the show's part, because like we didn't have to like go and find her. Like, she found Burnham. It was, I don't know. I like, I'm still thinking about it and processing it, but overall,
I think I would have like if I could do like a small change or modification, I would have had 2 Quat Millats arrive, and you can still have Burnham's mother be part of that, but I would have had like an official advocate for Burnham, and that would have been Romulan and or Vulcan Quat Millat, right? That she doesn't know about, and that person can, kind of address the courtroom and do all that from the legal perspective, but also her mother accompanies. And then you could have had those scenes where Burnham's mother is being mother to Burnham, but without her necessarily also being the advocate, which I found a little
jarring.
Strange. Yeah, it didn't work for me. That's what we're talking about. I was saying that it didn't really work for me. That I don't feel like an illegal I mean, I suppose in the United States or wherever, I think if you're a lawyer, you can probably defend your son or whatever. But for this trial and the nature of it, it felt a bit like a conflict of interests.
Well, it seems like it seems like the Navarre just trust the Quat Millat. Like, they don't care that it's Burnham's mom. They just care that this is a Quat Millat. Like, that's what's more important. Like, she is, in fact, I think even she, the character, is like more a Quat Millat than Burnham's mom, if that makes sense. And ultimately, she was helping, and ultimately she was helping Burnham out, because ultimately that's what made the President Tarina, which, by the way, my sister's name is Rena, so I think she's gonna love that the president's called Tarina. But the president gave the data over because Burnham finally got real. And I think also that was something that I loved about this episode, is that like we finally got like, Burnham, I feel like uncomfortable with how much everyone's pushing Burnham this season, but I think it's the right thing to do, because she's going through it, and she really this whole time needed to realize that she was home all along, that her purpose has never changed, that being lost for a year or traveling the galaxy for a year doesn't change who you are inside. And I love that as well. Robbie's got a couple of things in the chat, and I want to address one of them, which is I wonder how much we'll see Burnham's mother going forward. I think that this is perfect. She's chilling out on Vulcan as a Quat Millat, and every now and then we get a Mama Burnham story, and maybe she'll be important later on. But I do kind of like that she,
communicate with her now and then. I think that's
like they did with Sarek. This is kind of cool. You have a Sarek
like
now.
The idea kind of having a conclusion to her story that is not something as drastic as death or this or that. It's just like now she can chill out. She's living her life on this Quat Millat thing, where there's probably a few guys as well. Even though it's all female, they've addressed that they can incorporate a few Australians if they have to. But yeah,
my problem with Burnham's mother showing up, and I had the same thought as you, Sean, where I didn't know it right up until she transported over and the veil was over her face. I'm like, clearly this is going to be somebody we've seen before, and I just like Burnham's mother, and they're not, like, right at the last second. And it's interesting. I don't really know what to think of it. Like, she's there like to point out all of her flaws, and they're doing this thing in this season where they're deconstructing Burnham. Like, that's the theme.
Yeah, well said.
Deconstructing Burnham, and they just like overshoot it here. Like, they just go a little bit like too heavy-handed, and the whole episode, in fact, seems like an awful waste of time in the terms of like this whole thing about, can they trust her to get the data and to do what's right, and like, why is the data so important, and yada yada yada. And then at the very end, what happens? Her mother gives, the president trusted her all along, or like, not trusted her all along, but like, it's just like all that courtroom or all that stuff with everybody looks good. Like, the Romulans look good, and like everything looks right, and I love the production design and the costumes. Like, it's all beautiful to look at.
I love the combined.
But I was just so bored. I was bored. I was just bored watching all of that stuff.
This. Caleb says, I'm halfway through the episode. My dad came in and switched on the football game, so I'll have to finish it later. We are spoiling things, so do be careful. This is spoilers.
Yeah. Spoilers. I love the Idic and Romulan, the Falcon or bird of prey, I guess it is, combination badge. that everyone wears. That was cool.
That is very nicely designed. I like that.
I can't wait to have one from Fansets or whoever makes them. Because I do have my IDIC there. I don't have any Romulan stuff.
But what? Let's go back to.
Do you guys find it?
Hold on 1 second. Burnham's mother got sucked through the hole. And like, where did she go? And how did she land on a planet? And like, how did that work without her dying? She didn't have the suit on, did she? No.
She had her own.
Yeah, she had her own suit, but like what PJ's talking about is in that scene, the suit gets sucked into the wormhole, and then she gets sucked in after it. I imagine as she's traveling into it, the suit remerges with her, like it latches back onto her, and she safely arrives into the future.
But I find this kind of thing is like Rise of Skywalker level coincidence. It's like, wow, she just. Like, you wouldn't think you'd ever see Burnham's mother again, but they kept hinting at it in an earlier episode, so you knew she was going to show up at some point. And she's a member of the Quat Malat, and I would have rather it not be her mother and be like another actor and playing that same role, but being well researched on Burnham, like as a good, smart person does. Like, I'm going to find out everything about you, Burnham. However, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I could have gone either way, but I was delighted that it was Burnham's mom, only because
I get
the
that.
actor. I like the actor and everything like that, but I think it's kind of cool. Burnham and her are so alike; they're both like mavericks. I think Father might have coined that for Burnham, and that makes sense for me now. It's like I think that like it makes sense that Burnham's mom would be a warrior, ninja, nun. Space nun, like if she wasn't time traveling, constantly saving her daughter from danger. I mean, talk about a helicopter mom.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask you guys.
Let your daughter die. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna ask you guys, just from like excluding the fact that it's Burnham's mother, just talking about the fact that she's human. There's a lot of discussion with the three Vulcan / Romulan representatives that we have there. They're very thematically, they're very much talking about culture and all of that. And how do you guys feel about them having a human represent? Is it appropriate that they just don't care, or
I think
it would have made?
I think Elnor broke the tradition of whatever Quat Milat traditions were, and 900 years later, I bet there's Quat Milat that are humans.
No, I'm not talking about Quat Milat. I'm talking about specifically having a trial. You have this sort of debates class, or whatever it is, right? You've got this debate going on, and it's all about how Vulcans and Romulans were betrayed by the Federation and the people among it, and it's like, how are we going to retain our sort of cultural identity and cultural integrity and all of that? And it felt maybe a bit strange that it was someone human that was designated to defend the person confronting all of that.
I think that by the time of TOS, like the Vulcan Science Academy and the Vulcans, while they are very Vulcan centric, obviously Burnham now puts into canon that like they didn't care that much because they accepted a human, the daughter, the foster daughter of Sarek, into the Vulcan Science Academy. And I actually liked that because I think I've always had a problem with like the Federation being too monocultural. Like I would think that a real Federation would be like, not quite on homeworlds. Maybe there's way more of the homeworld species, but I would think that like in Star Wars, I think is more realistic, ironically, the other franchise, because you do see on all these worlds, no matter if you're on Tatooine or Coruscant or whatever, you see tons of others that are trying to make a life on that planet.
I think it makes total sense that if like the way they tell the story is that her mother was rescued by the Quat Malat and taken under their wing, and of course she's a very intelligent person, so obviously she would adopt their ways, and I don't see how they would like not put her up in the ranks in terms of that religion or whatever. And it kind of makes sense that she's the mediator because she's a human, but she's also ingrained in the Vulcan slash Romulan
Oh,
culture.
She has perspective on both cultures and on both.
And much like her daughter is. So although I think it's very like coincidental that her mother just happens to show up at this time in this position to defend her daughter, it's come on.
Yeah. So had it not been her mother, they could have put another human,
or even a Cardassian or a Klingon or anything, just to show that they're not.
Yeah. Okay.
They're not. Perhaps it was a Klingon that they took care of, like a Klingon child that they've raised, like it's a Worf like or something.
Yeah, the Quat Milat are like a cause, and they don't necessarily. My vibe that I get is like they don't necessarily care who you are, as if you fulfill the like like the zeal or whatever you want to call it that a Quat Milat has, that almost anyone could be one. And again, Elnor is kind of precedence for that. Because he was the first male co-op Milat that they took in.
Yeah. Again, I don't. That's kind of not where I was going with this. But
no, I know you were talking more about Burnham and like Michael and stuff.
The council itself accepting that the Quat Milat representative be not Vulcan or not Romulan. But no, it's fine. It does make sense that they would choose someone that is, I suppose, culturally closer to the person that's being represented, or to the person that they're addressing. So yeah.
Well, it's almost even though it's like it is so like it's just beyond like coincidence. You know what I mean?
I mean, I also
I can't get over that. But anyway,
I also saw it like Burnham pulled out this card. I'm a member of the Vulcan Science Academy and I invoke, blah blah blah. Right? So they had to have this trial. So their card back was, oh yeah, guess what? Your mother is a Quat Milat, and like she's actually gonna like be your advocate, which is actually your adversary. So like I think it almost like, if you think of the Romulans as always playing chess, and now they've integrated into the Vulcan culture. So the Navarre, I think, are like a calmer version of that. And so like it wasn't done with ill intentions like a Romulan may have perhaps done so under the Empire rule, but like it was still like a chess move back to say like, oh yeah, like you took our queen, well here we're taking, what I mean? Like so that's how I took it.
Officially speaking, we no longer like in this era, we can no longer speak of Vulcans and or Romulans. We need to speak of the Navarre.
Of the Navarre, yeah, it's true.
That is who they are. That's interesting. I do find it a bit strange. This is a bit unrelated, but in the beginning of the episode, Burnham's all shocked and appalled, and she's like, I don't believe it, that the Vulcans would quit on the Federation. They were a founding member, la-di-da. And it's like, you've literally just seen that Earth and humans have quit the Federation, and the Andorians have as well, which that's 2/4 of that's half of the founding members have left the Federation. Why are you shocked about a third? And of course, the Tellarites won't be addressed because no one cares about them. But I'm like, why are you shocked by that?
Can we address all the red eyes in this show?
Eyes?
All the red, cried out eyes.
It's my eyes were full of. My eyes started crying
over you.
I was too. My eyes were red. I was crying like pretty much the whole episode.
It's a very emotional show. It doesn't work for me, but from what I'm seeing online, like in our little Star Trek Twitter community, there's a lot of people that get very emotionally invested in everything that's going on in Discovery. It doesn't work for me personally.
I look for the feels, but admittedly, when there is a point where like it's too much, I haven't crossed that in this episode particularly, but for me, I thought it was appropriate in this episode. But I definitely think that like all TV nowadays kind of goes for the feels over story a little too much.
What you watch. I'm gonna cut it and say that's what you watch.
I mean, I'm a sucker for the feels, don't get me wrong, but I also recognize it's too much, like in TV in general, except for The Expanse. The Expanse doesn't. In fact, the Expanse like makes you hate some of these characters.
I'm watching
it's the opposite field.
I'm watching Fargo at the moment, and there's none of this. There's none of this super emotional.
Let's not talk about other shows.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, host.
So she's got the data now, and they're gonna find out the origin of the burn. So, do you think it's like a race or a group of people who caused it?
I have no idea. Although they showed some weird. I know Trek on the Tube doesn't like to talk about the future, but they showed some weird scenes. I haven't analyzed them yet. It's Cybok. Cybok has the burn. I thought it was weird. So the Vulcans thought that they caused the burn because of the Federation pushing them to develop this SB-19 thing, but they knew that they didn't cause the burn because of the data that they had. Like at that part, I was a little confused, and I've watched the episode like almost 4 times, so like I'm still a little confused. I gotta kind of like pay attention to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know if they've thought that through or not. We have to wait and see what they're doing with this.
Gonna do in the rest of the season.
The thing about the mystery box, the burn, this was the one episode where I truly did not care about the burn anymore. I was just like, just give me. I wanted some like scavenger kind of stuff, like a little bit action packed, a little bit of drama, but like not too much.
Right.
And this episode isn't dependent on big action sequences and set pieces, so it relies on conversations, and the conversations between Saru and the Vulcan president are all great. I could have had an entire episode with just 2 of them talking.
Burnham and Book too. They have got nice chemistry.
Yeah, Burnham and Book at the end, and
also during the Spock scene, that was nice to have Book there to kind of like highlight some of the things that he was seeing. It was a cool perspective. Guys, I'm so sorry, but our Thanksgiving late lunch, early dinner is ready. I'm being summoned, and so I have to hop off. But I'll see you again on Starfleet Boy later on today.
Yes.
No.
Oh
no.
After you guys, it's fine, whatever. But we'll have both PJ and Sean and possibly Dom Paris on the episode today later on. So I'm gonna try to keep listening though to this discussion, because I'm sure I'll have I don't want to like stumble over the same things you guys have talked about when we talk later, but I'm sure I'll have questions too. So I really appreciate it, and I'm thankful to be on these streams. And yes, I'm invite me to all your streams. All right, see you later.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, so do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
Well, I still have to watch it a second time, so I'm coming out of this first viewing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still like, I did my Twitter reaction video where I'm kind of like on the fence. I don't really know where I'm going with this. There were a few things that I found a little strange. I'm still not convinced by this burn thing. I would have preferred it if the burn was kind of like a background detail. I think for like the next few seasons of Discovery, that they would slowly uncover secrets as they go on unrelated missions. I think that would have worked better than making it kind of like the focus of it all. Because now it really does feel like another thing, like it's another Save the Universe plot, except that this time the universe is already screwed and you need to put it back together.
Well, they seem to be building somewhat of a universe in terms of you have all these characters now, like the Orions and the
the
Andorians, the Emerald Chain or whatever. And you have this mysterious character Osira who we haven't seen yet. So I think they're going to be like going into like episodic territory here and there later on, but this was, I think, my least favorite episode, just because I just wasn't entertained in any real way by it. I was just like, okay. And I just didn't care about the burn. I'm like, I know you're going to drag this mystery out until the very end, and we won't know the true reason until the very end. And it's like, no, I don't even want to wait that long. I just don't. I'm losing interest fast anyway.
Remember there was that species in TNG that said that we needed to stop using warp drive because it was deteriorating subspace, and so they wanted to put it like a speed limit on warp warp drives. That was like season 7 of TNG or something. Maybe they caused the burn out of anger because no one ever addressed them. They never came back in any episode, so they got mad. So they were like, let's cause the burn and get some more screen time.
Yes, that could happen.
Yeah, I'll watch it again. I'll watch the episode again and see where we go. I do feel like there was a lot, like it was almost, but not very much a trial episode, but not an interesting. I mean, I'm coming out of the menagerie here, and I'm pretty convinced that's a good episode.
You know what would really surprise me if somewhere in the season they come across a secret organization, not necessarily Section 31, but an alien one, and they have fucking spore technology, and they're very discreet and very like safe about it, almost like, you know, cautious time travelers, but like jumpers, like they don't put it on display. But
Okay,
it's a question of why these people in the 32nd century goddamn can't recreate the spore drive like
well,
quick time.
here's my question for you, okay? All right. When Saru arrives at Niva, he says, "We didn't want to, you know, sneak up on you. We just have a specialized device that enables us to appear."
Yeah.
But he doesn't say what it is. And yet, in the dialogue that follows that, she gets mad. Vulcan president gets mad and says, "Well, you know what? Why don't you just go back where you come from, and I'll see that spore drive in action." And I'm like, he didn't say it was a spore drive. No one mentioned anything about spores in any situation. So either the Federation told them about it in their full debrief, because they were supposed to they sent them what he called a full report about Saru's coming, and I'm assuming that means Burnham's coming. I'm assuming the full report went over the fact that Burnham didn't die, she came from the past, etc. But does that contain spore drive information? I wouldn't have assumed that the Federation that the Federation would share that information.
The Vulcans are the Federation. I mean, the Vulcans knew as much about the spore drive, I think, as the highest levels of, you know, humans in the
No,
Starfleet.
everything was. You think because everything was classified and the ship was said to be destroyed. But anyway, she's like, she knows it's the spore drive immediately. But
In the highest levels of Vulcan society back then, or the Vulcan, you know, chain of command, they're on the High Council in the fucking Federation or whatever, you know, with the Earth and whatever else. Maybe Andoria and like the other ones didn't know, but Vulcan and Earth would definitely be the ones to know about the spore drive, and it'd be like the highest level of classification. So, excuse me, if the president could look up that information, you know, like 900 whatever years later, which she probably very well could, she would know certain things. But why haven't that's the thing. If so, why wouldn't they have recreated it?
I'm thinking they did. I'm thinking SB-19, that Stargate or Voyager has like this catapult thing at one point that they use that belongs to someone. I'm feeling that might be a spore related thing because it's got the SB-19, spore bubble.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
spore something 19.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe that because she says spore drive immediately, and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe she could have done the research like you said. But maybe she's just assuming, oh, well, you know what? If they go from this place to this place, it's a spore thing.
Yeah. That's a good theory. Well, we'll find out soon.
We'll find out soon. Or we'll just talk about it at length on Starfleet Boy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've gone long enough. I've got to go. And we were going to keep it to 20 minutes, but this has been a great discussion. Anyway.
There was many of us.
And, you know, a lot of these thoughts were like we didn't do like a structured review of it, obviously, but it was just great to listen to everybody, just you guys talk, and you know, it's always a pleasure. So Until next time, folks.
Starfleet Boy says I'm looking too deep into all of this. That may be true. That may be very true. I mean, we always look at things in Discovery like, oh my God, they must be putting Nielsen as first officer, but Discovery can't look too deep. Just go with your gut. Go with what? It's Tilly.
I think Totty is looking too deep.
All right.
On that note, live long and prosper, folks.